Welcome once again to Talking Shenmue, where we break down each episode of Shenmue the Animation with members of Megavisions and the Shenmue community. This week, we're joined by cinematographer and one of the directors and writers for A Gamer's Journey, the Definitive History of Shenmue, Adam Sipione. How's it going, Adam?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
It's good to talk to you again. It's been a long time since we've actually chatted. I mean, when has it? I think we talked before, maybe E3?
Yeah, I thought it was E3 2019, and Marcin just added 2 extra years to that, and he said no, it's 2017. And I never felt so old until I was like, man, has it really been like, oh my god? I know, but it's been a long time. I had a lot of fun at that E3 with just at the show and with you guys there. It was a lot of good times, and yeah, it's crazy how it's been that many years.
5 years.
It is nuts. We actually published a photo in the last issue of Megavisions of a group photo of all of us there at E3 when we were having dinner with the whole crew there. That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. So
that was me kneeling with the Dreamcast.
That's right. I was doing some sort of a Shenmue fighting pose, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That's awesome. So we talked to I mentioned your documentary in the introduction, but can you tell us a little bit more about the documentary and just kind of how it's all going?
Yeah. Well, I guess for those listening who don't know, a long time ago, I started doing a kind of like a fan documentary about Shenmue. This was before the announcement for Shenmue 3. Started getting a bunch of footage for that. Shenmue 3 ended up getting announced, and then a few emails later, a few contacts made, and I ended up taking that to Kickstarter, and we were kind of in a position to tell this really cool definitive history of Shenmue, kind of, by talking to not just like the fans and the voice actors and that kind of thing, but actually with Yu Suzuki, the original development team. Got to go to Japan, hang out with the guys at WiseNet, go to the Sega headquarters, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy journey. I feel like it's been like a decade since I started this, but yeah, I'm happy to say though, I know it's been a very long time, but it's basically done. And when I say basically done, I mean like we're just finishing up the end credits and getting a digital link that we'll be sharing out to the backers in the next little bit. I can't say when, but like we're at that stage now where we'll be able to share something with everybody who's been following along.
Wow, congratulations. That's quite the epic journey to get that finished. Man, I can't imagine what that feeling. Tell me, like what is it? What are your feelings now that you're wrapping it up finally, and you can kind of finally push it out the door?
Yeah, I mean, like as a filmmaker, it's a huge weight off my shoulders. I'd never taken on something of this magnitude before, so it being done is amazing, and it's at a point now where I'm happy with it, and I think everybody involved is happy with it. Is it the film that I set out to make? I can't answer that for sure because I wasn't sure what I set out to make. I just wanted to talk to people in the Shenmue world and kind of tell the story of Shenmue because for the three of us, Shenmue is like this pinnacle in gaming that is one of the most important video games ever made, right? So I think me setting out to do this was like, I want to tell this story, do it justice, and yeah, like as a fan, I couldn't be more happy with how everything turned out.
Awesome. Marcin, do you have any questions for him before we move on?
I mean, like I'm super ecstatic that you got your documentary finished. And in terms of everything that everyone has been facing, with COVID and all that kind of stuff, I'm really excited to see what you guys came up with the documentary. So I'll be eagerly watching that when it comes out.
Yeah, I think you and I go back, like there's 2017 was the E3, but then I think I ended up coming to Chicago, meeting you for that first time in like you were one of the first kind of stepping stones actually into when this whole thing started. So I get a lot of that credit kind of goes to you because you were helping me, find my footing around Chicago when I was there, meeting Adam Korlick and kind of, touching base with some of the Shenmue community people. So
I remember going on the Beercade in Lincoln Park, I think, in Chicago, and we were having a conversation and all that. Yeah, and then we went, I think, to Lou Malnati's with Adam Korlick and all that. That was really fun, and I totally forgot about that. But yeah, that was like 2015.
It was, yeah.
This was all around the time Shenmue 3 was announced, and I was knees deep in all of that. So
I think that was
frustrating.
just before the announcement. Yeah, like must have been months.
It must have been. Yeah, you're right. I think, yeah, because you were doing the documentary before they did the announcement for Shenmue 3.
Yeah, like we had to reshoot a whole bunch of interviews too, which is like a whole thing in and of itself. But yeah.
So you actually started the documentary and doing interviews before Shenmue 3. So you had no idea that they were like legit about to
Yeah, man,
announce
like
this.
it started off where I just wanted to tell like a love letter to this game that meant so much to me as a kid and that I kind of forgot about. And I'm like, if I could make it like 30 minutes long and talk to a couple fans, and like I think at that point I was like, if I could like just get like 2 YouTubers and also Corey Marshall, like done in the bag, best Shenmue documentary ever, like the most in-depth that anybody's ever done. Just because at the time, like there wasn't, I don't think so anyway, that there was anything like that. And then it just kind of snowballed, right? Like it's just Shenmue 3 gets announced, and then you start reaching out to more people. And then the funniest story with this whole thing was when I just shot Peter Moore a Facebook friend request. Please don't go out and friend request Peter Moore. It just so happened that I just sent him a nice message and said, I'm doing a documentary about Shenmue, would love to talk to you about your experiences. And he basically wrote back and he was like, yeah, sure. Like, can you come down to EA Studios and we'll talk? I'm like, okay, sure.
What the?
So that kind of gave me the
simple.
confidence I needed to just start reaching out to literally everybody.
That is awesome.
And you start friend requesting everybody.
No,
Facebook.
that was just Peter Moore was the only one.
But yeah, no, that sounds awesome. But what were some of the can you just talk about like some of the challenges of trying to do all this? I mean, you said that once they announced like Shenmue 3, you had to kind of change course a little bit. I mean, that in itself, I imagine, is a little crazy, right?
Yeah, it was. We weren't at a stage where we were like done or anything like that, but it was very much like, here's the direction that we're going, because we're talking about Shenmue. The third game isn't real. We're gonna kind of pull on people's heartstrings and kind of go in this way and be like, oh, too bad, so sad kind of thing. But look at all the memories it made. But then when Shenmue 3 was announced, we looked at where we were and we're like, okay, let's hard pivot, go that way. And it really opened up once we it was just like a Hail Mary pass that we introduced ourselves to Yu Suzuki by way of, I forget who it was. It was like his assistant, but I think Corey March, somebody like that, had an in that we just kind of were like, hey, can you let them know what we're doing? Because I think that they would be interested. And we put together this whole pitch. And I remember a couple of weeks go by and we got an email back from Wisenet and they were like, hey, this looks awesome. Like, let's talk more about it. Like, we're on board. And that's kind of when everything changed. But getting to that point was like the biggest hurdle, I think. After that, I don't want to say it was all downhill from there, but doors definitely started opening up. Then it just became a matter of like, now how do we get the friggin' thing, taking it to Kickstarter and having to take ourselves to Japan, get all this footage, tell this story, translate all the interviews to English. Just a lot of like technical behind the scenes stuff that I didn't think would be so hard. But when you're dealing with like another language and a feature length film, yeah, there's a lot of things to keep in mind.
What was it? Because you said originally when you kind of envisioned it, you kind of wanted to do a much smaller scope, I guess, documentary. But what was it that changed the scope of it? And what was that? Was it just getting access to certain individuals that you thought were key to the story, and more doors opened up, and before you knew it, you're like, hey, let's go all out and let's see what we can do here.
Yeah, I think the big catalyst that made it change was getting the in with Yu Suzuki and basically them allowing us to come to Japan and then talking to the whole dev team. And we're like, okay, we're in this cool position where we could not just do like a short YouTube video documentary just about Shenmue, but like really dig in. Because when you tell a documentary about Shenmue, you're not just talking about the game, right? Like you have to, in order to talk about Shenmue, you have to talk about the Dreamcast, and in order to talk about the Dreamcast, you have to talk about Yu Suzuki, and in order to talk about Yu Suzuki, you have to go into the arcade scene in the 80s, right? And like what that was like in the console, the 6th generation console, right? There's a lot of stories within Shenmue that you kind of have to tell in order for people who don't know anything about the game to get the big picture.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to see this. So once it's finally released, where are people going to be able to go to see it?
So first and foremost, we're sending it to the Kickstarter backers who kind of got on board with us. After that, like, I don't want to make any promises or guarantees, but we're not just going to let it die there, you know. So I'm sure that there's going to be some way for people to get their hands on a physical or digital copy. But first things first is just get the copy out to the Kickstarter backers, starting with a digital link, and then we'll go from there.
Let's
Sounds
get
good.
that Netflix agreement or Crunchyroll. Let's go.
Right?
Right.
Sent a
It seems
couple
like
emails to Crunchyroll and Adult Swim, like, hey, you guys are doing an anime.
Exactly. I think that could work.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you if you once you make any announcements, we'll definitely cover all of that on the Megavision's website. So all those watching and listening, be sure to stay tuned, because we'll definitely have some more news about Adam's documentary. I do want to turn our attention to the anime a little bit, Shenmue the Anime. Adam, when this was announced, what was your reaction about this anime, and what did you think when the first you saw the trailer?
Oh, when I first, it was all literally was around the same time that like we were getting ready to have our first child. So I didn't have time to process it until like way later. But I remember being like, oh, anime, that's cool. And then I kind of just like put it off to the side. And then when I finally came back to it, it was like, oh, this is huge. Like, this is massive. It's Adult Swim, it's Crunchyroll. Like, it's gonna expose Shenmue to a ton of new people. And I was super pumped about that. I didn't have like any specific expectations for like the story, or really in the anime in general. I was just happy that we were gonna get something. But first and foremost, I was just pumped that like it was just bringing it to a wider audience, which I think is kind of what I wanted to do doing the documentary. But this is going to do like way more effectively because Adult Swim is such a household name almost.
Do you feel the original games? I mean, they did release the HD remakes not too long ago, but do you feel like it's still a hard game for people nowadays to get into? Is there a barrier of entry there, you think, that makes it to where it is better to have Shenmue told in other mediums, whether it's a documentary or an anime? Do you think that's important?
That's, you bring up a good point. I mean, there's always going to be the group of people who would much rather consume a story via an anime, or like another medium like that. But to go back to what you said earlier about, is it a hard game for people to get into? I think with the HD remakes now, I want to say no, not as much as it was at first, because I don't want to call them like walking simulators, because they're, that kind of like comes with like a boring connotation to it. But there's some of my favorite games are just those walking exploration games, and I think because of how popular those are with a lot of people, it kind of like paved the way for a game like Shenmue to be revisited through a different lens, for some of these people who are now fans of these games, like Gone Home, or trying to think of like What Remains of Edith Finch, and like Life is Strange. People would call like, oh, all you do is walk around and talk to people, but those games have a huge following, and I think if people playing those like those games, what's to stop them from revisiting those HD remakes and being like, oh, this is a game similar to games that I enjoy of the genre, but it came out like 20 years ago. Maybe I'll give it a shot. So I think it's a little bit more in a nicer place. But yeah, I don't know. There's obviously going to be people who say, I don't have a rock, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's how it goes. And thoughts on the anime so far? Have you gotten caught up and watched all the episodes?
It has been, yep, like part of my morning routine ever since I got my Crunchyroll Premium. I just wake up, have coffee, and just like, I try to do one a day, but I kind of crushed like 3 or 4 episodes all.
Nice.
But then,
And thoughts so far?
oh, so good. The opening theme song just like sets the stage. One of my favorite things about it is first two episodes. I don't want to say like I don't want to compare it. I don't know what I could compare it to, but and this is gonna sound weird, but do you remember Sailor Moon? Like that. So there was
Yeah.
a certain aesthetic about the atmosphere and like the background and the cityscapes and stuff like that that was so took extra care to make the environment seem unique and like lived in almost. And I especially with the first two episodes of Yokosuka and Dobita, went that extra mile to just really make the setting like its own thing and not just something that blends into the background. It almost like services the story. And when I saw that they did that, I'm like, yeah, they get it. Like they get what Shenmue is about, and they captured that so well.
I love just seeing all the little like Easter eggs and other references. They've done a good job to it's so hard because there's so much of that in Shenmue to really show it all. It's impossible, but I think they do a
Yeah,
pretty good job of kind of
for sure.
giving
Like
some winks.
it's fan service to a degree, but it's not going to be lost on people who have not played the game. I think they're going to see that and they're just going to get sucked into that world even more. But yeah, like seeing Tom's hot dog stand and like Kurita's jacket shop, it's like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump into the more recent episodes. We are going to combine kind of last episode 4 and episode 5 in this week's episode. So Marcin, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you get us caught up? What happened in episode 4 and then leading into episode 5? Let us know kind of where we're at here in Shenmue.
So episode 4 and 5 is essentially the culmination of Shenmue 1, the game. And as Adam, I'm sure you know, and everyone has seen that the approach to the story in the game have been remixed to a certain degree, and they've taken different creative avenues on how they're telling the story. And I think they did a great job with it, and it also adds different angles to it. And I've mentioned that before many times about how we get more life out of these NPCs that we see in the game, and how they give them more depth and layers. So 4 and 5 basically revolves around the kidnapping of Nozomi, the confrontation of Terry and the Mad Angels, Rio arriving in Yokosuka Harbor and meeting Goro for the first time, who's a fan favorite character, and Mai and that whole relationship, and obviously the forklift, and Mark, I believe is his name. And you get all of that in episode 4. So in episode 4, he arrives at Yokosuka Harbor. He sees Goro beating up a guy, and then he kicks the crap out of him, and that's where we get that caption. In the game, I think he says, "Don't you know blackmail is way uncool?" In this version, it was worded a little differently, but it retained the same meaning. So I was actually happy to see that. And Goro basically thinks that Rio is working for this specific, I guess, shipping agency or group of people. And he calls him his aniki. You see that a lot in like the Yakuza games too. It's like a sign of respect, and he's basically willing to do anything that Rio asks of him.
Simping hard for Rio at this
Super.
point.
Notice me senpai to the 10th degree.
Yeah.
So we basically have Rio learning about the forklift, and obviously that is something that had to be included in the anime, because that's like a thing that people recognize a lot from Shenmue. Is people also jokingly call it a forklift simulator, which that is.
Can I just add?
True.
Did you see the promotion that Adult Swim did before that episode? Like they put up a tweet, or I guess I saw it on Instagram.
I don't know if I did.
It was a picture of Rio driving the forklift, and the caption was just "forklift arc incoming," and that was it. And I was like, okay, like they were having fun with it. But
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't see that, but I'm happy that the marketing department or whoever's in charge of those profiles did that, because that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So we get Rio learning more about the Mad Angels, and then we also get Nozomi kidnapped. And this was also done differently than in the game. I don't think we had a lot of information. Like, I feel like Nozomi just kind of showed up. They just like, hey, look who we have. And she's like, tied up. But in this one, in the episode, she was actively kind of like listening in and trying to figure out who the Mad Angels were. And she confronted them and ends up getting kidnapped. And Rio, near the end of the episode, takes a motorcycle, also different from the video game, because in the game he asked his friend to grab a motorcycle. In this one, he kicks a Mad Angels member's ass and takes his motorcycle.
Terminator style.
Terminator style. Give me your boots and your motorcycle. And then he like drives to the harbor and confronts Terry. And we get the penultimate, episode, basically ending with, saying you have to, basically kill Guizhang. And in episode 5, that battle basically continued. I think they kind of also went a little backwards, because the end of episode 4 was them kicking each other, and then they fall over. And then he's like, oh, now the harbor and all that is mine. Maniacal laugh, maniacal laugh. And then in episode 5, you basically get a little retread, and then it goes to that specific scene where they do the dive swallow kick. What is its specific name?
The swallow dive kick.
Well, thank you, dive swallow. The swallow dive kick, and then they both knock each other out. And this episode also shows kind of Goro and Mai trying to figure out, also how to help with Mark, how to help Rio in the situation. And they obviously trick Terry, and then he brings out the 70 men from the Mad Angels, and you get, the 70-man battle in a very short time window. Like, it's a very short scene. They kind of, it's not as epic as it was in the video game, and I don't blame them, because like I said, you have a lot to cover,
time constraints and everything. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I'm glad they showed it. So this is also different, because they didn't have Mark and Mai and Goro and all them that involved in this scene, in this part of the game. So I was actually kind of happy that they gave these characters more purpose. I mean, I thought they did a lot with them in the game, but I'm glad they gave them even more in this. So yeah, they fight, they save Nozomi. You get a little flashback of Nozomi running up to her, like, oh, hey, I'm here. And then she sees like him talking to Guizhang, saying like, yeah, I'm going to Hong Kong. And then she just kind of stops and is like, oh, crap.
Yeah, because she's been like really trying hard to get Ryu to go to a university with her.
Yeah.
And he's just like, nah, I'm not gonna do that.
I gotta prove my father isn't a killer.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that, they drive on the motorcycle, drive away. Obviously she's gonna go to Canada. This is a thing that she actually, I believe, expressed to Rio, but I don't think that was really done in the anime. It seemed like it was just a personal decision that wasn't emoted out to him. So, and that's basically where it ends, is the motorcycle scene, and then end credits. I forgot. And then Chai's obviously there. That's a big thing that I just missed. Sorry. So Guizhang is supposed to go with Rio to Hong Kong, and then you have Chai show up and kick the giant metal rods that injure his ankle, and Guizhang isn't able to go. And then we have, Hong Kong on the horizon in the next episode, it seems like.
Yeah, so this is basically officially finishing up what was like Shenmue 1 in the game, right? It's basically Ryu.
Which I expected. I thought the first season, because I didn't really do any digging into what the arc was going to be, but I just assumed season 1 was going to be game 1. But I'm kind of glad they're escalating it, because Shenmue 2 is my favorite of the 3 games. So getting to Hong Kong, I'm like, yes, let's go. Also, did you guys happen to see So I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but this kind of hyped me up when I saw it. But there was that teaser of what probably Donyu's silhouette. I don't know if you guys caught that.
Are you talking about like the red hue or whatever, like the city, like the?
Yes, and then they brought up like silhouetted characters, but the person in
Mhm.
the front was like a big fat guy, and I'm like, I know who that is.
Yeah, that's definitely Donyu, and then
Yeah.
everyone else there. I'm gonna be interested to see how they take that, how they take Shenmue 2. And I think there's 8 episodes left now. So like they did the first 5 of Shenmue 1, and then the other 8 are gonna be, I'm assuming, Shenmue 2.
I
We
wonder
met.
if it's if they're gonna even include Guilin or not.
I mean,
Well,
like
because they've already started
yeah,
doing
That's
some of
right.
that. I mean, so
Yeah.
so you see her. So I maybe they're gonna just do all of it.
they did a
All of
tinge of Shenmue 3 at the beginning of the series, and I was like, oh wow, I guess they're just weaving in Shenmue 3 with Shenmue 1 by introducing like
Mhm.
characters you don't see until the third game.
Yeah, but considering they wrapped up Shenmue 1 that fast, it leading me to believe that I think that everyone's seeing Ren as like the character that everybody's gonna love the most. So like, okay, let's get to Ren like right away, and I think we're gonna see him get fleshed out a lot more than in the games. I think.
Yeah, I
there's so
think that,
much to look forward to with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
and there's
Shenmue
just
2
so
is
many
gonna be
more
awesome.
characters too. So many
Mhm.
like bigger characters. Shu Ying, Wong.
Wong, yep.
Uh, oh my God, I forgot the little girl's name.
Bang Mei,
Thank you.
Cool Z, Sam and
Cool Z.
Larry.
Yeah, all these
Maybe they'll
people
have
that
like
they
a
have introduced.
little buddy bromance thing going on.
Yeah,
Sam and Larry were kind of like background characters in the second game, but it's kind of in a way so was Mai in Shenmue 1, at least for my playthroughs. She was just somebody I kind of like ran past on my way to warehouse number 8. So I'm glad to kind of see her story. I don't even know, like, did her and Goro have a thing in the first game, or did I just like not pay attention to those
Oh
Mai
yeah,
and
we
Goro.
can't skip over the fact that they're getting married. Was that in the
That
game at
yes,
all?
that did happen. Yes, that did.
Was
What?
that in
It
the
did?
game? Yeah, it's been so long, but I guess I did not see that part.
Yeah, them and my that whole thing was a little subplot in the first game for sure.
Hmm.
So I'm glad they retained it.
Maybe it shows how long it's been since the game originally came out, because my reaction to that is like, this is just a bad decision. Don't do it.
Yeah,
Any
Don't do
seen
so
it.
Love
many.
Is Blind 1 or 2? Like that
Goro's
Yeah.
they
an
get
idiot.
married in 2 weeks.
There's been so many things in that first season, like in the first 5 episodes, that because it's been so long since I played the game, I'm like, wait, am I remembering this wrong? Like the swallow dive is like, okay, I remember learning that, but they used that like he overused that move, and I'm like, was it that
He was
important?
spamming it a lot.
Yeah,
He
he was.
spammed it
I
a
was like,
lot.
I think I used it in the game, and I was like, nah, not very effective. Pit blow for me, and that's it.
That iron palm thrust was one of my go-tos.
Yes, yeah, super
It's
good.
going to
Swallow
be
dive is
interesting.
more like just back away kick, like get
Yeah,
away from me.
I like the one that Yamagishi-san teaches you. That one was pretty OP.
Yeah, I'm glad also they introduced that in
Mhm.
there. But like so let's talk about like a couple of quick discussion points with 4 and 5. Um, so what do we think about, Ryo's relationship with Nozomi in the anime versus in the video game? Obviously, from what we see, it looks like that arc has closed. But do you feel like they've done a better job, with Nozomi and Ryo and their relationship? Um, do you feel like it's the same? How do you feel about how they portrayed those two in the anime versus in the video game?
Mm. Well, I'll be fair. I played through those games like probably 10 times. I've only ever done the English version. I have yet to do the Japanese version, but I don't
Mhm.
know if something is lost in translation. But it feels like in Shenmue 1, Ryo does not even seem to like acknowledge sometimes. Like he's like, I have to save you from the Mad Angels. But other than that, you wouldn't even be able to about her. But this could have just been the English version coming across the way it did. But in the anime, there was definitely more of like a playful like relationship that they've kind of known each other for a while, and I think that kind of came across that they were almost like, oh hey old friend, or like person that I've known for a while. Like they kind of teased each other, and there was that chemistry there. But I think they definitely fleshed that out a bit more in the anime. But you kind of have to when you're working in 22-minute episodes.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree with that. And I feel like in the extent of them kind of fleshing it out more is Rio showing a bit more emotion. Like Chris was saying, I think the first or second episode, like he's like laughing and smiling, which was weird to see, because you don't really get that in the game, because he is more stoic. But I felt like, despite those 2 or 3 instances of that, I felt like that relationship still kind of resembled the video game, with in the sense of him still being focused on his father. Like she's going to Canada, but they didn't make that big of a deal out of it. Like she's still kind of in her emotions and in her feelings about it, and Rio's kind of also in his own bubble. And I felt like that feeling also kind of resembled what was depicted in the last 2 episodes, I felt.
Yeah.
I don't know, Chris, if you had any additional thoughts on their relationship in the anime.
I just thought that they did a overall better job with Nozomi, in the anime. I thought just her character, she was more important. She was doing stuff that, was helpful. And I think like, yeah, kind of like what Adam was saying, just, in the game, something was missing there. And I just thought that I think they did a better job in the anime. So that's great. And you, like you said, Ryu seems to have more of a personality, which is great. He still does weird stuff like standing on a moving bus, like standing up in the aisle. He still does that weird stuff. And he also does the thing where he repeats someone's what they just told him and like kind of looks away, like really weird. I thought that's hilarious.
How he
But
processes his thoughts, I don't know.
Yeah.
maybe, but it's great that they actually took that like small kind of like weird personality trait that he does in the game, and they have it in the anime. So that just kind of
Yeah.
goes to show some of the attention to detail. But I thought, this is, they do just they really kind of focus on relationships a lot in the series, because another one that I thought's a really interesting one is Guizan's and Master Chin's relationship, because in episode 4, he was basically like, don't call me dad. I ain't your dad. I'm your boss. If whenever you do that, we'll be out of the game and we'll be dead by then. So, but so that's where we were at with their relationship at the end of last episode. But towards the end of this episode, it kind of goes full, a 180, and at the end, he's like basically like, you could call me dad. It's okay. And so I thought that was kind of cool to see them start to kind of mend that up. I don't remember how they did that in the game though, if that was handled as well or whatever in the game.
I don't think it was that honed in on the relationship. I don't think it was fleshed out at all. I mean, like they there was a line about Rio talking about his father and what would he do, but I don't think there was a line of dialogue between Chen and Guizhang in the game. Just that that vague subject of your father, you have a father, I had a father, what would you do? And I think that was the extent of it. I don't think a lot of that was fleshed out like in the anime, which was good. um so yeah, and then obviously we thought Guizhang, and I also thought in the game, oh cool, Shenmue 2 will be like, you're gonna have a buddy and a pal helping you out in the form of Guizhang, and then his ankle gets messed up by Chai. So hypothetically, since we all know how Shenmue 2 turns out, how would Rio's adventures have gone differently if Guizhang actually showed up and helped Rio? Do you feel like the storyline would be severely altered? Do you think it would be like what we end up getting in Shenmue 2 when Rio, finally meets Joy and Ren, and then they're all kind of like a team, but they just kind of, sit back in their little hideouts and then just kind of help when needed. What do you guys think about if Guizhang was introduced into the mix? Would it have affected the story at all?
Well, now all I could think about is of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but I would see it playing out exactly like that, where it's just like Ryo, Guizhang, Ren, and Joy just kind of like trekking around Hong Kong and Kowloon, just getting into all sorts of shenanigans and never losing fights and always winning and just having that kind of camaraderie. Which now that I said that out loud, I would love to see that. That sounds so much fun.
Yeah, let's. They should. That's the other thing that I want to ask you guys as kind of a closing thought, and this can can go in many different directions. But In Shenmue 1, in the game, and then what we get in the anime, there are a lot of different story beats that were remixed and some removed, like Tom going to America. And I don't think they showed the tornado kick. I don't believe they did. So what do you guys think, or what do you hope to see in Shenmue 2? Do you feel like there are certain things you would want to change? Do you feel like, what are things that you hope they keep? What are you guys' thoughts on what they'll be doing for Shenmue 2 in the anime?
Good question. I would personally, I'd like to see Rio kind of get thrust into a bit more dire situations that have a bit more like weight to them and consequence depending on how he handles it. Because up until now, and Shenmue 1 kind of played like this, he was a big fish in a small pond, and he was able to just tackle head on whatever came at him, much like the first game. But in Shenmue 2, they're like getting your bag stolen and going up against like tougher adversaries, even like getting like, depending on how well you did on the fight, like getting completely knocked out and then having to get Wong come and save you after that kind of thing. I would like to see the anime take a bit more of a turn that way and make it a bit more serious, a bit more consequence, just so there's some stake in the game for people watching, and it's not just, oh, Rio's always going to be okay because he's the best fighter ever. A little bit more, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Do you think we're going to get the boat chapter, or do you think you're going to open it up?
I think it's boat chapter for sure is what the next episode's going to be. Okay. I'm calling it.
That's exactly what I was going to say, was that I'm wondering how they're going to handle that, because that would be a great thing to add into the anime, right? To show all of that, that we've never really seen, because I think it was only, that whole chapter was only like a comic book, was it, or something like that?
They had like comic strips in the Xbox version. I don't know if they had that on the Dreamcast version, but yeah, Rio walks off the boat. You have the mom and the girls, like, you helped her out on the boat. You're like, what are you talking about? Who knows? And I guess Chai just comes back and kicks his ass again. So I wonder if they're going to include that in the next episode.
Yeah. It would be huge. It would be the biggest like fan service thing they could do. It would be something that I think all the Shenmue communities would be talking about if they did like a full fleshed out boat chapter.
And I think it's a great opportunity to flesh out some of these things that haven't really been put in any sort of like medium like this before. If there's anything that that Yu Suzuki wasn't able to get in story wise or plot wise into those original games, this would be a cool way to introduce some of those. And I think maybe that's what they have been doing up to this point, and that's why we see some of those characters, interactions, and relationships evolve maybe a different way than they did in the game, because maybe it's just how you kind of wants to do things at this point. So yeah,
my 2 cents is I want a more fleshed out the arc with when Rio is actually in Hong Kong and he's at Manmo Temple, and that whole relationship with Shu Ying and Fang Mei and all that. I want more dialogue stretched out from that. I think the other thing that I'm going to be curious about how they handle is the character of Yuan, because there are differences in the American version and in the Japanese version. And for those of you who don't know, Yuan is the person with like the zebra pants and the boot, and they're with the chainsaw and they have the short hair. In the American version, they portray Yuan as a female. And in the Japanese version, it's either a person who is trans or just likes to dress in drag. It wasn't very clear, but it's a male. It's a male voice actor who portrays it, and I'm curious to see how they actually interpret that character. In the next set of episodes, because you can't avoid that character not appearing. So I'll be curious to see how they handle that person. But yeah, super excited to see how many things they have a new spin on and what they retain for Shenmue 2.
Yeah, I think so far the 5 episodes, they're pretty faithful to the source material, though. They're taking liberties, but they're they're not making it totally different. Like I think some animes have been adapted and the fan base just gets turned off from the get-go. I think they're keeping the fans in mind, but also keeping in mind that these are short episodes and supposed to contain like equal parts story and action in these 22 and a half minutes. So
Yeah, you're not going to get like 2 episodes of Rio in the Yellowhead building open doors
yeah.
for 2
So
episodes.
so what do you
trying to
mean? There's
figure out
no
what's going
episode about him airing out the books? That's just only that. Come on.
Exactly.
So they're trying to catch the leaf.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, that's
I wouldn't
great.
mind, but yeah, they're not going to, fill that time with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, thanks again, Adam, for coming on to the show with us. Where can people go to find to follow more about your work? The Shenmue documentary, that whole sort of thing.
I mean, I think Shenmue Dojo has quite a few resources if you're interested, like on the forums, or they've hosted some YouTube videos of like the trailers we've released and the making of videos and stuff. So I would start there if you're curious. And yeah, just hopefully one day more people will be able to watch it than just the few Kickstarter people, but I'm confident that they will. So
Sounds good. We're excited to see it.
yeah,
Congratulations again, and thanks for coming.
thank you. Yeah, cheers. It was fun.
All right, sweet.